A staggering number of people remain missing, despite the efforts of their families, volunteers, and the authorities to track them down. While some missing person cases are relatively new, others have remained unsolved for decades, and only time will tell if we ever learn what caused these people to suddenly vanish without a trace. Number 10. Cynthia Sue Wilkins, a 51-year-old woman from Fulton, Illinois, has been missing for more than 2 decades. She mysteriously vanished on the 9th of March, 2004, and has not been seen or heard from since. The events that followed her disappearance have left investigators baffled. At the time, Cynthia was living on the 700 block of 11th Avenue in Fulton, and she was employed as a substitute teacher while also studying towards her master's degree in education. She was a student at Northern Illinois University and was excited to complete her studies, which makes her disappearance all the stranger. After she was reported as missing, witnesses would come forward to report that they'd last seen Cynthia at her house on the 9th of March. They were unfortunately unable to provide any further details, such as how she left the property or if she left on her own. Before this was done, though, the case took a puzzling turn. That night, at around 10:30 p.m., a fire broke out in Cynthia's apartment complex, and her apartment was completely gutted. When first responders arrived to douse the flames, it was assumed that Cynthia was still inside and that she lost her life since her car was still parked in its designated spot. But it would eventually be found that this was not the case. Searches were conducted of the gutted apartment and the surrounding area, but no sign of Cynthia was ever found. Investigators expected to find her remains in what was left of her building, but it soon became clear that she wasn't home when the blaze started. Many of her belongings, such as her wallet, were found, but no further clues were uncovered. When her car was searched, it also failed to provide any clues as to where she may have gone or what happened to her. When the fire was investigated, it was discovered that it started in Cynthia's apartment before also damaging her neighbors' apartments, but the cause of the blaze could not be determined, and it remains a mystery to this day. No one was hurt in the fire. Investigators started to put together a timeline of her movements, and they determined she must have left the apartment between 12:30 and 10:30 p.m. that day, and search dogs were brought in to track her scent. They managed to follow her trail to the Mississippi River, specifically to the foot of the North Bridge, but here her scent suddenly vanished. Further searches were carried out, but to no avail, and in the 20 years that followed, no further progress was made in her case. No witnesses have ever come forward with sightings of her, and no one has suggested what might have happened to her, and none of her other belongings have ever been found. Concerns for her well-being were high, since she suffered from a medical condition, but the details of this have never been made public. If you have any information that could lead to Cynthia being tracked down, you're asked to contact the Fulton Police Department at 815-589-3617. Cynthia's nameless case number is MP4310. Number 9. While the disappearance of 35-year-old Shaina Hillary Feinman remains unsolved, 2 people have now been charged in connection with the case, since it's believed that she was a victim of foul play. Shaina, who originally hailed from North Carolina, was living in Yavapai County, Arizona in 2024. She moved to the state in 2022 after becoming familiar with the area during multiple visits. She'd been living in Guilderland Center, New York, where she finished high school and was keen to get away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Once she had settled, she met a man named Cavett Jack Richards and they started dating. A few months later, the couple decided to move in together. They found a 400-acre property located between Seligman and Peach Springs, and upon finding out they could live there in exchange for cleaning up the property, they accepted the offer. Shaina was excited about the prospect of living in the area since she had a love of the outdoors. She'd often go hiking, and in the past had gained certifications in survival programs and survival skills. She had also worked as part of a wilderness therapy program in the past, where she served as a guide. It's known that she was on the same property on the 9th of March 2024, since she was seen leaving on foot at around 5:30 p.m. The details surrounding her last sighting are concerning, since one witness stated that she and the owner of the property had gotten into an argument shortly before she was seen walking into a wooded area. Another witness stated that she didn't walk into the woods, but was running since she was being chased by someone. This was the last time that anyone saw Shaina. She wasn't reported as missing for about a week, but a report was filed when she failed to pick her dog up from a friend who was looking after it for her. When the property was searched, her personal belongings, including her car, camping gear, passport, and wallet, were found to still be there. Her cell phone was missing, but it was later found on another property in the area. Richards and the owner of the property, William Thomas Dalcero, were questioned, but they refused to cooperate with the investigation. Shaina's sister would later report that she'd received voicemails and messages from her, in which she stated she was afraid and that she was worried about her own safety, but she didn't elaborate. In August of that year, Richards and Dalcero were taken into custody and charged with ending Shaina's life. They were charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a body, as well as conspiracy. Despite searches of the area where she was last seen being conducted, no further signs of Shaina were ever found. Anyone who has information that could provide further details on her case is asked to contact the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office at 928-771-3260, quoting agency case number 24010-354. Number 8. It's usually a good idea to walk away for a while to cool down if you're ever in a heated argument. But it's also remarkable how many missing people cases start this way after someone walks away from such a quarrel. This was the case in the disappearance of 24-year-old Patricia Lee Otto, who's not been seen since the 31st of August, 1976. Her case remains unsolved decades later, despite the best efforts of investigators to find out what happened to her. Before she disappeared, Patricia was married to Ralph Otto, who was 18 years older than her. But the marriage was deteriorating since she had filed for divorce. But by Mother's Day of 1976, the couple had decided to try and mend their relationship, since they also had 2 children with whom Patricia spent Mother's Day that year. On the 31st of August that year, the 2 children had been visiting their grandmother, and Patricia arrived at the house to pick them up at around 11 p.m. She then drove back to the house that she shared with Ralph, but once there, the night took a turn for the worse. She and Ralph got into a heated argument, and she decided to take a walk to cool down, but she was never seen or heard from again. Her sister found out that Patricia never returned home when Ralph arrived at her house and asked if the children could stay with her while they went to search for her. She contacted the police, and a missing person case was opened. From the very start of this case, investigators have had suspicions that Ralph was responsible for Patricia's disappearance, and that he may have decided to end her life. When the 2 children were questioned, their daughter revealed that she had seen their dad assaulting Patricia, and that at one point during the argument, he picked her up, placed his hands around her throat, and then carried her away, though she couldn't say as to where as she lost sight of them. It would later come to light that Ralph had suspicions that Patricia was having an affair. The children would also reveal that Ralph told them that their mother wasn't missing, but that she had decided to leave, abandoning her children in the process. Ralph then took a drastic step when he started to feel that investigators were asking too many questions. He stated that he was being harassed, and at one point hired a hitman to end the life of the police captain who was overseeing the case. Unbeknownst to him, though, he'd fallen into a carefully orchestrated trap, as the hitman he spoke to was an undercover police officer. Once the hit had been agreed upon, he was taken into custody and charged with attempted homicide. He was supposed to serve 10 years in prison, but quite unbelievably, his conviction was overturned when it came to light that Idaho's laws didn't consider the hiring of a hitman to end someone's life to be comparable to attempted homicide. Ralph was arrested again years later for an unrelated crime, and he passed away while in custody. Patricia's children were then sent to live with their aunt and uncle. Many people believe that Patricia's remains were found and labeled as the Finley Creek Jane Doe, since the remains found there belonged to a woman who was wearing similar clothing to that which Patricia was last seen in. Unfortunately, when the woman could not be identified and the cause of her passing could not be determined, the case was closed, and the remains were cremated along with the clothing. Patricia's family believes that this was Patricia, and they are hopeful that she will be positively identified one day. Anyone who has additional information on her case can contact the Lewiston Police Department at 208-746-0171. Patricia's NamUs case number is MP2064. Number 7. By March of 1978, 44-year-old Joyce Lee Kennedy's marriage to John Thomas Jack O'Keefe II had come to an end. The couple got married in 1972, but after O'Keefe started abusing her, Joyce decided to get a divorce, which was finalized in 1976. At the time of her disappearance, she was living in Seattle, Washington, where she worked at a SeaTac airport as a ticket agent for Pan American Airlines. It's known that she worked a full shift on the 20th of March, 1978, and that when her shift ended, she left the building. The next day, she failed to show up for work, and when her manager was unable to get a hold of her, she was reported as missing. It would only be 2 days later that the car was found in the visitors' parking lot at the airport. Investigators discovered that the car's doors were left unlocked, which they found strange, and it was determined that Joyce was in the car after leaving the building, since her purse and keys were lying on the front seat. The case then took an unexpected turn when it was discovered that she was supposed to meet with O'Keefe later that same day to discuss an outstanding loan that she had made to him. She was anxious to get the money back, but was also worried about the meeting, since she had asked her brother Jack to go with her. Unfortunately, he wouldn't accompany her that night and stated that he wasn't available. It's believed that she traveled to O'Keefe's house alone, and that something then happened to her, since she never returned home and has not been seen since. She's not made contact with her family, and it's strongly suspected she was a victim of foul play. Joyce's family believes that O'Keefe is responsible for her disappearance, and that he may have ended her life to avoid repaying the money that he owed her, but this has never been proven, and hence he's never been charged. It's been suggested that after Joyce traveled to his house, an argument broke out, during which O'Keefe ended her life. Her family thinks he then disposed of her remains before driving her car to the airport, where he left it in the spot where it was found 2 days later. He was likely hoping it would look as though she decided to leave of her own accord, but since she's never contacted her family again, this scenario is highly unlikely. It's been suggested that once O'Keefe arrived at the airport, he couldn't get access to the employee parking lot, and instead resorted to leaving the vehicle in the visitors area. Anyone who has any additional information on Joyce's disappearance is urged to contact the Port of Seattle Police Department at 206-787-5400. Her NamUs case number is MP17790. Number 6. Harry Dennis Milligan didn't have the easiest start to his life. Soon after he was born in 1962, it was noticed that he had club feet, and he had to endure surgery to have them corrected. Nevertheless, he went on to become a good basketball and football player while in high school. As an adult, he joined the Marine Corps Reserves and started studying at Northeast Missouri State University, now known as Truman State University. But in 1984, something inexplicable happened that would change the lives of his family members forever. At the time, he was living in Albia, Iowa, and on the 30th of June that year, he and a few of his friends decided to have a night out. They stayed out late that night, and it's known that between 3 and 3:30 a.m., Harry was in the city's business district. Witnesses have since come forward to report that they saw him driving on Main Street in a northerly direction, which led his friends to believe that he was on his way to his parents' house, which was in Avery, about 7 miles from the area where he was last seen. He was seen in his 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix, a maroon two-door vehicle. But Harry never made it to his parents' home, and they've not heard from him since that night. On the 1st of July, his family reported him as missing, and an investigation was started. During these types of investigations, the missing person's vehicle is usually the first clue that the authorities look for, since its contents could provide vital clues as to their last movements. But in Harry's case, his vehicle has never been found, and hence it isn't known which areas he traveled through that night. When his friends were questioned, they stated that they dropped Harry off at his car after they had decided to head home, and they saw him drive towards his parents' house. They were baffled by his disappearance, since he told them that he was planning on playing a softball game later that afternoon. Searches were conducted in the areas that he frequented that night and all over Albia, but no sign of him was ever found. In an effort to drum up leads, a $500 reward was being offered to anyone who could lead investigators to Harry's whereabouts, but no additional witnesses were ever identified. Flyers detailing Harry's case were distributed across the country, but no further information was received. Soon enough, the case went cold, and with no further developments, Harry was eventually declared deceased in 1992. His parents always held out hope that he would be tracked down, but they've both since passed away, and his remaining family has asked that anyone with information contact the authorities. Anyone who has spotted Harry's car or has any helpful information on his case is asked to contact the Monroe County Sheriff's Office at 641-932-7815. Harry's NamUs case number is MP27746. Number 5. Suzanne Elizabeth Streeter, known to her friends and family as Susie, has been missing since the early 1990s, when she and her mother disappeared along with one of her closest friends, and the case has not been solved to this day. Susie and her mother moved to Springfield, Missouri in 1980, a year after her parents got a divorce. She spent the rest of her childhood here, and while in grade school, she became good friends with Stacy McCall. She went on to attend Kickapoo High School, where she attended classes for students with learning disabilities, as it was believed she may have had dyslexia. She told her mother that when she graduated, she wanted to study cosmetology, but in the meantime, to make extra money, she took a job at a movie theater. On the 6th of June, 1992, Susie attended her graduation ceremony at her high school and then had dinner with her mother at home. She then left home to attend a few parties to celebrate and meet up with Stacy to do so. She told her mother that after attending the parties, she would sleep over at a hotel in Branson, and that she and her friends would then spend the day at the Whitewater theme park. It's known that Susie and Stacy attended a party on Coach Drive, since they were seen there by several witnesses, but later that night she phoned her mother to say that there'd been a change of plans, and that she'd now be staying over at Janelle Kirby's house in Springfield, rather than booking into the hotel. At around 1:30 a.m., the pair was seen at a party on East Hanover Street, but they soon left after a neighbor called the police to report a noise disturbance. When they arrived at Janelle's house, they decided to leave since it was already too crowded, and ended up going back to Susie's house. It's reported that they arrived at around 2:15 a.m., but later that morning, Janelle started to wonder about their plans to go to the theme park, since Susie and Stacy had not been in touch. She called the house but got no answer, and so she decided to pay them a visit. She arrived just after noon, but found the house unlocked with no one home. Susie, her mother, and Stacy were nowhere to be found, and on the 8th of June, a missing person investigation was started. The house was searched, but no clues were found. It was noticed that the porch light's cover was broken and that the TV had been left on, but nothing seemed to indicate that there had been any trouble at the house. Susie's car, as well as her mother's and Stacy's, were still parked at the home, and all 3 sets of keys were in the house. Strangely, their purses were left close to Susie's bedroom in a pile. Investigators also found the mother and daughter's cigarettes and Stacy's migraine medication. Since Stacy's shorts and jewelry were found in Susie's room, it's believed that she was wearing just a t-shirt and underwear when she left the house. A waitress at George's Steakhouse would later report that he saw the 3 in the restaurant that day at around 10 a.m. She added that Susie's mother was having a tough time with her, since she was likely still intoxicated from the night before. In January the next year, someone called the America's Most Wanted TV show to report that they had information on the case, but the switchboard operator accidentally cut the call, and they were never heard from again. No one has ever been charged in this case, but foul play is strongly suspected. A $52,000 reward is being offered to anyone with information, leading to the 3 women being found, and any tips should be directed to the Springfield Police Department at 417-864-1810. Number 4. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance of 36-year-old Peggy Johnson are alarming to say the least, and investigators are keen to figure out what happened to her in 1995. But they also believe that the case will only be solved if someone comes forward with new information. For reasons unknown, Peggy had several last name pseudonyms. These included Peggy Cram, Davis, Huffstutler, Etherin, and Johnson. At the time, she was living in Murfreesboro, Illinois, and was often seen in bars in the area. The night of the 9th of August that year was no exception, as witnesses would later describe seeing her at Jean's Tavern in the company of 2 men. When the men had finished their drinks, they decided to go to a coworker's house, and Peggy asked if she could join them, to which they agreed. They traveled to DeSoto, where Peggy continued to ingest alcohol to the point where she lost consciousness. 2 of the men decided to return to the tavern, while the other drove her home, but along the way, Peggy woke up and stated she was hungry. The man stopped at a Hardee's restaurant where they purchased takeout, and then pulled around the back of the building to eat. Peggy then noticed one of her friends approaching, and she got out of the car. She and her friend then headed back to the tavern, despite Peggy still being heavily intoxicated. The following morning, a member of the public reported something truly strange. She stated that he was in the vicinity of an unemployment office when he saw a long-haired man sitting in a car with his head down. He believed the man was inspecting something he was holding in his hands, but the witness didn't see what the item was. He entered the office, and when he returned a short while later, the man had driven away. But the witness then found Peggy's purse on the ground where the car had been parked. When the 3 men who were with Peggy were interviewed, they gave differing versions of what happened that night. The man who was seen with her at Hardee's stated that she took her purse with her when she met up with her friend. He added that when he took her to his car, he had to carry her, and that he arrived back at the bar at around 11 p.m. But the other 2 men stated that she managed to walk to the vehicle, and the 3rd man only arrived back at the tavern at 1 a.m. Investigators are doubtful that Peggy met with a friend at Hardee's and that she never made it to that restaurant. The 3 men have never been named, but the last man who drove her away from the house remains the prime suspect, though he's never been charged in her case. Anyone who can shed further light on her case is asked to contact the Murfreesboro Police Department at 618-684-2121, quoting agency case number M95D8621. Number 3. In the year 2000, 23-year-old Peggy Ashley Vincent was a mother of 3, but her 2 eldest children were living with their biological fathers. She was employed at Federal Mogul in Scottsville, Kentucky, but the 29th of that year would see her working her last shift before she suddenly vanished. That afternoon, she had just finished her shift when witnesses saw her getting into an argument with her boyfriend. The fight turned physical, and he was seen assaulting her with what's been described as a deadly weapon. She managed to get away, and after getting into her car, she traveled to the local sheriff's department to file an assault case. It's known that she left the building at around 1:30 a.m., and about 30 minutes later, she arrived at the A.O. Smith Electrical Motor Plant, where she was seen in the parking lot. Witnesses later told the police that she was being followed by another car, and that it was obvious since the other vehicle was driven very close to hers. During the investigation into her disappearance, Peggy was caught by CCTV surveillance cameras that were installed on the premises. She was seen getting out of her car and into the vehicle of Calvin Smith, who remains a suspect in her disappearance to this day. Smith then drove out of the parking lot, and Peggy was never seen again. When she still hadn't come home 2 days later, the babysitter contacted the police, and a missing person case was filed. Smith was the first person to be questioned, and he stated that Peggy asked to be taken to a payphone. He claimed that he obliged, and once she'd finished making a call, she got back into the car. He then dropped her back off at her own vehicle in the parking lot where she had left it. This was quickly found to be a fabrication, though, since no calls were placed from the phone booth that night. Furthermore, the surveillance footage from the parking lot revealed that the pair never arrived back there, and it was now clear that Smith was hiding something. During the investigation, Peggy's bank accounts were monitored, but they never showed any activity. It should be noted that Peggy's boyfriend, the man who assaulted her before she contacted the police, has been cleared of all suspicion. In 2019, a barn on Smith's property was searched, but the authorities have not revealed whether any further clues were found. To date, no one has been charged with Peggy's disappearance, and her case has gone cold. It's almost certain that she was a victim of foul play, and while most people are convinced that Smith is responsible, insufficient evidence has been found to charge him. Investigators welcome any additional leads, and these can be submitted by contacting the Allen City Sheriff's Department at 270-237-3210. Peggy's nameless case number is MP64. Number 2. 47-year-old Marilyn Brinson's disappearance has been solved to a certain degree, since her husband John was charged with ending her life. But many questions still remain unanswered, since she's never been found. In July of 2002, Marilyn and John were living in Kansas City, Missouri, where they were raising their 4 children. She was employed at a Texaco Start Mart on Northeast 68th Street, and John worked as a machine operator at a wastewater treatment plant. According to John, he last saw Marilyn on the 16th of July that year, as they were both at home that night. He added that nothing was out of the ordinary that night, but when he woke up the next morning, she was no longer in the house. He didn't think much of it, as he assumed that she had left for work, but when her fellow employees called the house to ask why she wasn't at work, he says he became concerned. He then phoned the police and filed a missing person report. He reported that Marilyn's car was no longer at the house, and it would be found on the 16th of July. Strangely, it was parked in the middle of 24th Street and Topping Avenue, and worryingly, it had been set ablaze. When it was searched, investigators found large amounts of biological material in the vehicle, and it became clear that she was likely a victim of foul play. It was determined that whoever had been attacked had been cowering against the passenger door, and that they were with a firearm, but the case only got stranger from there. In the car's intake pipe, investigators found a burned paper towel, and when samples of mud found on the car were analyzed, the results showed that they contained organisms that are usually found in rivers. The same type of mud was found under John's fingernails, and he quickly became the prime suspect. When the couple's apartment was searched, more biological material belonging to Marilyn was found in the complex's parking lot. Due to the amount of biological material that was found, investigators are certain that she's no longer alive. When John's handprint was found among the biological material in Marilyn's car trunk, he was arrested and charged with ending her life. It would later come to light that John and Marilyn had been arguing before she disappeared, as the argument was witnessed by their 2 sons. John stated that he found out that Marilyn had been unfaithful, but he maintained his innocence. At his trial, a judge declared a mistrial, but John was tried again in 2006, and that time he received a sentence of life in prison. He passed away without ever revealing what had become of his wife. It's been suggested he disposed of her remains in the Missouri River, or an area close to it, but searches have failed to provide any further information. It's also believed that he tried to cover his tracks by setting fire to Peggy's car, but his attempt failed miserably as he left behind a mountain of evidence. Anyone who can bring Peggy's case to a close is asked to contact the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department at 816-234-5136. Her nameless case number is MP7837. Number 1. 27-year-old Janette Maria Corpuz, who also uses the last names Accord and Snyder, has not been seen or heard from since her mysterious disappearance in 2003. At the time, one of her children was living with his father in California, while her other 2 children from a previous marriage also lived with their father. The year before she vanished, she and Lyle Montgomery got married, and in 2003 she was employed at a Super Kmart in Reno, Nevada. Lyle also worked at the same store as a pharmacy manager. According to a real estate agent who was the last person to see Janette, she was planning on leaving Lyle and relocating to Redding in California with her son. The real estate agent had traveled to the couple's house on the 13th of January, and Janette has not been seen since. But it is known that she and her ex-husband spoke on the phone on the 21st of January, and he reported that they just had a usual conversation. He didn't notice anything strange about her demeanor and was as surprised by her disappearance as everyone else. On the 25th of January, the case took a disturbing turn. Janette's son, who was only 3 at the time, was found by himself at a Shopko department store in Salt Lake City, more than 200 miles from the family's house. It would be determined thanks to CCTV footage that Lyle had abandoned the child there, and he was arrested. Her son was sent to live with Janette's ex-husband, his biological father, who lived in California at the time. It then came to light that Janette had disappeared. In the meantime, Lyle had to be treated at a psychiatric hospital after he ingested too many illegal substances. But on the 27th of January, he was released. Foul play is suspected in Janette's case, since large amounts of biological material were found in her and Lyle's house. It was discovered that a bed and dresser had been removed from their bedroom, and soon enough the case was upgraded to a homicide investigation when the biological material came back as a match for Janette's DNA. Her son revealed that Lyle had discharged a firearm at Janette that night, but missed and hit the missing dresser instead. This was not the first time that such an incident had taken place, since Lyle had also pointed a firearm at Janette in 2002, and he stood trial for that incident in 2003. He was released on a $2.5 million bond, but lost his life soon after his release. Hence, the case has come to a standstill since Lyle was the only suspect, and investigators remain hopeful that they will receive further information from the public. If you or anyone you know has information on this case, you're asked to contact the Reno Police Department at 775-334-2155. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.